I hope Mike is going to do the right thing. I hope so. I hope so. Because if Mike Pence does the right thing, we win the election.
I believe Jesus Christ gave me two shoulders, one for a flag and one for a rifle.
So there is a lot happening right now, and let's talk about it. So I don't know when this is actually going to be live, but today is actually the day where a political rally by an outgoing president has turned into a riot and insurrection on our House of Congress. And I think, like a lot of people, you were taking in the news this morning and sipping your coffee, and you may have stopped watching these rallies, or you just sort of click through them. And I am one of those people. I can't watch it. I get sucked into a wormhole of a lot of negative energy, and it gets me really anxious and tense. And there's no real reason to keep that in my life. Plus, I think for me and my personal decision in not taking in a lot of this imagery and news is because I think that over time you become desensitized to it, and I don't ever want this to be normalized in my world, because these are not okay things, and misinformation and disseminating knowingly wrong information is something that I really struggle with, especially when you give that to people who are very susceptible to being influenced and don't need a whole lot of factual information to act on emotion. And so this morning was different in that was happening simultaneously to Congress unpacking and supposedly counting the votes. And we knew ahead of time that certain leaders were going to stand up and they were going to entertain conversation as to the authenticity of what the results were on certain state certifications. So the news was flipping back and forth between this rally and his minions talking these talking points that are uncomfortable, and they're uncomfortable for me because they're untrue. And they largely go unchecked in real time, or we have also stigmatized our reporting bodies, which is a much bigger conversation for a later date. And now we have a hard time taking in the information that we're receiving, right? I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth because I don't know. I'm like watching some of this still play out live. You knew that the riot was getting out of hand, and I am not unaccustomed to watching people protest in good faith and good spirit against beliefs that they believe with the embodiment of the passion that they feel for them, and I believe that that is important to democracy. And so seeing people riot, I've seen people fight for disability rights and environmental causes, animal rights, that do sit-ins and walk into Congress for such things. But I think I underestimated what I thought could ever really happen today. It was while watching this particular moment where this pause right here, when this paused and then the screen cut, and then it transitioned to somebody who wasn't prepared to take over, that gave me flashbacks to 9/11. And I know that this comparison is potentially just a me thing, where you're watching something unfold in a place that is familiar to you, like DC is for me, and you're watching people that you know It is stressful. It is anxiety provoking. The need to consume information ramps up for me personally. I know that with my own background in PTSD, a lot of my social anxiety is not so much anxiety around the people or being out or anything around that. It's more based about the environment. And I know that because of this is going to sound political and it shouldn't, but because of our unchecked safety precautions in the United States with gun violence and domestic terrorism on a broad scale, you know, my husband and I have a plan, if we're in a public setting, of you have to be mindful of where the emergency exits are. And it's something that I always think about walking into, like a new store, like a box store in particular, those like big places where something could happen on one end and you are not necessarily able to see it, but you do need to flee as quick as possible. Like, we have our own check-in safety plan with that, and that in itself feels like people shouldn't have to worry about that type of thing, that immediate response to trauma of something that hasn't happened yet. And I also, on the same topic of such thing, I think that's while there is an overwhelming popularity and support to change that particular thing, the people who are influenced by actually changing it, unfortunately, I think, are not going to stand up and do that until their degree of separation is small from that type of an event. And what feels very unfortunate today is that a lot of these people are getting a first-hand experience in what living through this is. And even some of the internal reporting of some of the representatives and what they're saying as they're locked down right now is absurd. And again, that's probably another conversation, not for right now, so we don't get into the weeds more than I am. But today is anxiety provoking, and I'm going to consume a lot of news, and there are, as I just said, a lot of very anger-provoking comments that are being reported that are coming from the people that are hypothetically supposed to prevent this type of thing from happening. They have a direct link to intel that most of us are not privileged to ever have beforehand. And you know, going back to this environment of having PTSD in a social setting where you want to know who's going to be there at what time, what's being involved, what is the skinny on all the details, I think that today is a big day for consuming a lot of uncomfortable imagery. Who knows really where this day is going to go? It is horrific in just the ability that it can happen. This might be the start of something bigger. This is certainly a bigger conversation that is going to start a national conversation. Hopefully it's not going to be like Sandy Hook, where we have this monstrosity happen. I'm sorry, I keep looking at the TV. Hopefully it's not this time where this monstrosity happens like Sandy Hook, and then we miss this milestone to really affect change and it goes unchecked. Nobody's held accountable to it. Because I think that a lot of people who are survivors of violence and trauma, and knowing that accountability sometimes falls by the wayside, and that's part of the hypervigilance to, well, how do you know it's not going to happen again? Today is going to be one of those days for a lot of us, and consuming this information is going to be something that is going to be metabolized and processed over the days and weeks ahead. And I think that this is a long way around saying that I hope that we all take the time that we need to digest this and to know what today is and what that means for us, and that we do unify around the fact that accountability needs to be had about, we need to start getting this stuff out of our culture. We need to stop saying that it's okay to normalize disinformation. It's okay to normalize domestic violence. It's okay to normalize domestic terrorism, which is essentially what this is, what a lot of this is. This coercion into it, this, I keep going back to the word normalcy, and it shouldn't, and it isn't something that needs to affect us right now and the generations to come. We need to stop this, and in order to stop this, we need accountability, and to find accountability in this, we need to actually process what happens. So I just want to say ultimately that some people are going to be able to process this faster than others. I am probably going to have some breathing room around needing this, and who knows? I don't even really know how to end this vlog, but this is for the people who are going to be like me, that are going to soak this up because you need to know the information around it because of how it might disseminate and affect the environments around where we are in the future to come. And it is okay to take the time that you actually need to be able to move beyond this. And yeah, so today's a big day. Let's acknowledge it. And yeah, I don't know how to end this, but remember to grow from where you are, and I will share more with you soon. Tschüss.